What's up, Mob Crew? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am Chris with Monsters Under Our Bed. We cover murder, mystery to the missing. And today we're going to be covering a new case. There's been some bodies that are actually, let me get the screen out of the way here. There we go. So there's been a bunch of bodies that have been stacking up, 4 bodies in just 2 months in Austin, Texas, and 8 bodies in 10 months, all found in the same lake in Austin, Texas. Kind of strange. Now, right now, the local law enforcement says that there's no foul play, but for those that might have familiar with the Smiley Face gang, I have to be careful with the other word. There's a lot of similarities. It all happens to be usually young males, typically athletic, and then the cases that they came from a bar or a party, and then they're found either days, weeks, months later in a nearby body of water. And in the case with the Smiley Face, there was 2 retired detectives who actually did a bunch of research into these clusters, because with the Smiley Face in Northeastern U.S., there was a bunch of bodies that were found throughout 2000 to 2018 and even on. And they did look into some of these cases, actually quite a few of these cases, and found some very disturbing things. And so today's show, we are going to look into both cases. We're going to look into what's going on in Austin, and then look at some of the similarities there. And then we're also going to kind of go down memory lane and look at the Smiley Face for those that may not know about that case. It's very interesting. I picked out 4 cases from the Smiley Face that have some really disturbing evidence that they discovered while reinvestigating those cases. So, but before we get started, we always like to give back by featuring the missing. So let me get that started. And then, of course, we have a special guest, Steve from True Crime Web, who I'll introduce here in just a minute. And I saw somebody in chat. Did they, let me see. Chris, let me know if you need any artwork for your new place. Oh, that would be awesome, Elizabeth. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, definitely. If you have to email me. Yeah, that would be really cool. Don't have much at my new place right now. Okay, let's get into the missing. I really appreciate that, Elizabeth. All right, let me pull this up. Okay, so for today's missing, since in a couple of weeks, I will be going out and helping the search for Aiden Clune. He went missing a year ago on April 27th near Wells, Nevada. He drove about 60 miles approximately south into Curry, Nevada, pulled over on the side of the highway. Now, Aiden was suffering some kind of mental paranoia issues, and for some reason got out of the truck and walked towards the mountain range. Highway patrol would come shortly later, and they would eventually start tracking him for about 10 miles, and they lost his tracks, and he has not been seen since. As a matter of fact, I did do an interview with his mother last Friday. If you didn't catch that, it was very interesting. She shared some very interesting details. It was very heartbreaking. What a great mother. Very just an amazing woman. So we will be helping her in May 14th. And then today's other missing, since I featured her, but I forgot to feature where she was missing from, so I'm going to do it again. So this is Sarah Ebersole. She went missing on March 3rd of this year out of Reddick, Florida. Let me get this bigger here. And it says that they believe she was getting into a blue sedan, possibly a Hyundai, She is just 26 years old, last seen wearing a white tank top and black shirt. She is just 26 years old, 5'2", 116 pounds. If you have any information, please call 352-368-3508. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce my favorite co-host. Hey, Steve. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine, sir. Thank you for having me tonight.
Always an honor. And for most of you, know that we are literally we're waiting for the final message or email to come back. But a week from today, we will most likely be in Texas on our first cold case trip.
Yes. Our first one of us collabing together, and I'm looking forward to it. And we'll get everybody in there, hopefully, and hopefully we'll have some good results quickly, hopefully.
Yeah. And then we have some other multitasking trips that we've kind of last minute decided. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. So please stay till the end because we're trying to stack on as much as we can. So I'm very excited because this channel is going to evolve into, something else, something bigger. And couldn't do it without you guys that take the time to watch the show, like and comment. You guys are so amazing. So I do have a poll going. If you're not familiar with his cases, maybe wait to answer the poll, and then you'll get a little more familiar with this particular case. So I thought we would kind of recap what's going on with Austin, Texas. I got a little video to play, so I'll play that, and then we'll kind of discuss that, and then we'll transition over the smiley face and talk about 4 cases that I picked out. I mean, there's many, but I picked out 4 that are very interesting. And then we'll finish off with the latest from Texas and all that. So does that sound good, buddy?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me pull up. I just pulled up a couple of news clips that were recently from the local Austin news there. And so let me get this going. And here we go. Just to kind of catch everybody up on wondering what is going on in Austin, Texas.
I'm Casey Claiborne, and thanks for watching this Crime Watch YouTube exclusive, where we take a look back at recent crime stories that have been making headlines in our area.
Austin police are investigating after a man's body was found in Lady Bird Lake over the weekend. This comes less than a week after city leaders announced more safety measures. Fox 7 Austin's Meredith Aldis spoke with the mother of Jason Johns, one of the people found in the lake earlier.
Volume dropped off, Chris.
Yeah, it did.
To hear another body has been found. She says she relives her nightmare every time.
The 4th body found in Lady Bird Lake in the past 2 months. Jason John, an unidentified body, Jonathan Honey, and now John Christopher Hayes Clark.
Every time I hear about a body at the lake, it's more painful. When I think about another, it is heartbreaking.
On Saturday at around 1 p.m, the Austin Police Department responded to the Longhorn Dam, which is the east end of Lady Bird Lake, not near the entertainment district.
Multiple individuals had called 911 reporting that a subject appeared to be deceased and was in the water on this end of the lake.
The police performed a water rescue and found 30-year-old John Christopher Hayes Clark. Investigators say they do not suspect foul play.
Our initial information doesn't show anything suspicious, but we don't make that final determination until the medical examiner has been able to conduct their review as well.
This comes after the city added temporary fencing and lighting to the trail near the entertainment district and announced more park rangers would be stationed along the trail. City Council also approved a resolution directing the interim city manager to look into a safety plan for the area, including installing halo cameras and working with bars to prevent over-serving alcohol.
There's a lot of work needs to be done in Austin.
Plans started after Jason John's body was found in Lady Bird Lake in February, days after he disappeared heading home from Rainy Street. Since, 3 more bodies have been found in the lake.
It is not easy for that to come.
Yeah, I don't know why it's like going up and down. That's so weird. I had it all leveled out, so I apologize. I don't know why it's doing that. For the most part, we can hear everything, but that is kind of weird.
To hear this, every week or every other week, there is somebody's body there. But on the other hand, one thing I am a little happy about is after Jason's passing away, the Austin community, we were able to make.
In the last 2 months, 4 bodies were found in Lady Bird Lake near Rainey Street. 30-year-old Jason John's body was found on February 13th. The body of 40-year-old Clifton Axtell was found on March 5th. 33-year-old Jonathan Honey found on April 1st. And most recently, 30-year-old John Christopher Hayes Clark found on April 15th.
Our initial information doesn't show anything suspicious.
But despite police repeatedly saying no foul play is suspected, rumors continue to swirl of a potential serial killer in Austin. One media report even calling it the Rainey Street Ripper. A Facebook page called Lady Bird Lake Serial Killer currently has over 71,000 followers. Posts are made on almost a daily basis with theories and claims that support the idea of a serial killer. The posters coming to their own conclusions based on the number of bodies found in the lake. One user writing, quote, "Just admit there is a whole serial killer here already." Another writing, quote, "I've always thought it was a copycat of the Smiley Face killer." And, quote, "APD still saying there's no evidence of a serial killer?"
Nothing has come to light that would indicate that there is a serial killer in Austin.
Austin Police Chief Joseph Jacone says he knows about the rumors and says they're just not true.
I realize that there is a rampant rumor about a potential serial killer here in Austin. We found no evidence of that.
Chief Jacone adds these deaths aren't anything out of the ordinary.
It's tragic. It's a horrible circumstance that we have these.
He says people have died in the lake every year for a long period of time.
And so some of them are accidental. Unfortunately, some of them are also suicide.
He says APD will continue to investigate each case as they come and says if anything changes, the public will know.
And when we can and when it's appropriate to draw conclusions that some of them might be related, we would, believe me, we would be passing that information along to the public very promptly.
Okay, so that's just kind of a little update. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I mean, he says it's not out of the ordinary and they die all the time there. Show us the numbers and then they'll solve it.
Right.
You know, I mean, if this is something that is year in and year out that we have people drowning in that lake and entering in the lake in certain locations and going missing at certain times, I mean, it's easy to prove if it's not out of the ordinary. Otherwise, it's out of the ordinary.
Yes, Danielle, you make a great point. I started noticing that. You'll notice I've got the names of them, not all of them, but most of them. But yes, there is a John almost in like 70% of these cases in Texas. It's so weird. If either a first name or last name, there's a Jonathan John. It's weird. I'm glad you guys caught that because that is a little odd. Oh, do we got Tony D in here? Oh, let's see. Oh, Tony was the one that put it in there. 3 of them had John in their names. Yes, there's actually even more than I think. Because like I said, you got four bodies in 2 months, 8 bodies in 10 months, all in the same lake. And then there's more bodies if you go back further in time. But and they're kind of a little more spread out, but they're some similar circumstances. But that's
the point, is that they're spread out, and that's not all the time. I mean, now we have a consistent issue about it's within a cluster of a very limited time, and that's not ordinary, and it's not all the time, and we have to look at that.
Yeah. Good to see you, Tony. Tony D is from EquiSearch. He is an amazing guy. He was with me when we were searching for Dylan Rounds, taught me so much on how to use a drone. I mean, I'm certainly no master at the drone, but I definitely learned a lot from Tony. So much respect to him. And we were going to be heading out there to Texas your way. I might have to call you when we get out there. And Sarah, thank you so much for the super sticker. Anything you guys donate is going to be going to the cause. And we've ordered a lot of equipment. And we're getting prepared. Okay, so like I said, we'll come back to these cases and we'll talk about each individual case. And there was actually one guy that escaped, his Christian, back in 2019. In the same exact area. He was had some bruising. I don't know if he got beat up. I'm not sure if he knows exactly what happened. We'll look into that. But I want to transition to, because like I said, some people, or I'd say a lot of people that know this case and know the smiley face, see that there's some kind of similarity to that. So we'll kind of transition over to the smiley face. I've got 4 cases from the smiley face gang that we'll look at that are very odd, and then we'll jump back over. So let me get set up here. Okay. So when it comes to the smiley face, like I said, I have to be careful with the iller, but they found some very some PowerPoints, however you want to call them. One, white males, athletic, found in bodies of water. Some of them missing for long periods of time. Another thing is the bodies are found often in good condition, considering some of them are missing for long periods of time. The doctors, some of the videos I watched, the doctors, they said they would expect to see more decomposition from the bodies. So it's as if the bodies weren't dumped immediately in the water, and these people are actually kept alive a lot longer and then dumped later, closer to when the bodies were found. A major one is this happens usually after the victim has left a bar or a party or something similar to that effect. Some of these cases, the bodies are floating face up, which is not natural usually because they're face down. I would say it's not impossible, but they say typically the body, when it starts to decompose and bloat, it will start to flip. Even if it was thrown face up, it will eventually flip down. From what I understand, and you correct me, Steve. I could
No. I'm trying to think if I've ever myself personally ever recovered one that was face up, and I don't believe I have. And I've recovered numerous ones.
Interesting. And then sometimes some of these bodies, when not many toxicology reports are done, but in some of them that are the toxicology is done, they found a few of them that had the CHB, which is the date rape drug, and a few other drugs in their bodies. Not all of them, but some of them. Now, some of the weak points to the smiley face, and I want to start with the weak points. So with these 2 retired detectives, Gannon and I forget the other guy's name, 2 retired detectives who started looking into this case in, I want to say like 2018. And one of the common PowerPoints in their connection to all these cases is there's this smiley face graffiti that's found somewhere where the body's found. But the biggest problem with that is that the graffiti, the smiley face graffiti itself, is one of the most common things graffitied. And there's no like point of area, like how far away this smiley face has to be from where the body's found. So I would say that's kind of one of the weak points of the smiley face. The other one would be many cases are spread throughout the northeastern part of the U.S., which would mean there would have to be a cell and I have a theory, and I'll share towards the end. I'm curious what your thoughts on this, if it was some kind of cell. But drownings by actually, I got to change this, by self-inflicted are less than 2% of all self-inflicted drownings. Now, I think on homicide drownings, it's even less than that. I want to say it's like less than 1%, I heard.
I don't know about the homicides, but I had heard that about the on the self-harm.
Yeah. And Patty makes up a great question. Can they put up cameras? And what's interesting is some of these places have cameras, and it's like these guys just disappeared. It's really interesting. So the strong points really is some of these cases that these guys investigated, these new retired detectives, when looking into these cases, some of these cases, they discovered new evidence and actually got their cases reopened because all these cases were ruled as accidental drownings. Most of them. Some were undetermined, but most were ruled as accidental drownings. And then another one was similarities to the case with body decomp being moderate, considering even though a lot of these happen in the wintertime, a lot of these bodies of water, even though they're around like 36 degrees, it's not enough. But you do have some arguments against that, so I'd love to hear on that. So one of the victims, Dakota James, 23 years old, athletic swim champ. He went missing January 25th, so wintertime, 2017. He was last sighted in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, walking towards his home. So we'll look on the map here. And so he was leaving a bar, I believe, and he was walking towards one of the bridge. The bridge that was closest to him was actually closed off that night, which meant he had to go left. Now, they believe he fell into the river at this point here. He was captured on surveillance. This is one of the last known pictures of Dakota. But the bridge, what's interesting is he could have walked straight across because there's pedestrian sides on these bridges, and they even have cameras on them on all throughout these bridges, cameras everywhere. They think, at least local law enforcement believes, he went down these set of stairs, which then would have taken you close to the body of water. They believe when he was coming down these stairs, he flipped over this railing right here and went in. But one of the problems is his body would be found 4 weeks later. It supposedly traveled several miles, and also the body went through a dam gate, but yet when they found the body, there was almost no major trauma to the body. And once again, even 4 weeks, the body was in moderate decomposition, which the doctor. So go ahead, Steve.
Was he texting and walking at the same time?
He did have his phone out in this. Yeah, so that's another thing is we see that in these particular cases I'm going to show, I think all of them, except for maybe one, had cell phones.
Uh-huh.
And none of them would be found with their cell phone. Most of the cell phones, from what I understand, were never recovered in these cases that I'm presenting.
I mean, it's possible you could be highly intoxicated and texting and walking at the same time, but once you get to a certain level of intoxication, generally you don't multitask real well.
Yeah, this is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Tiffany. And unless he was forced down the stairs, it's possible. But like I said, they have cameras. If we get time, like I said, because we got a lot to go through, and I want to give Steve some time to talk about each case here. Now, where he was walking, now the reason why he was going across the bridge is his home was not far across the river there. So he was supposedly, going to hang, at the bar, and then he was just going to walk home. But for some reason, he never showed up, ended up in the body of the water. And so they found him 4 weeks later, several miles as we look here. So here's the point of entry at the bottom right here. It's where he fell in. His body traveled. There's a massive dam gate that is somewhere about here. Oh, this is Candace. Candace Cooley, Dylan Rounds, calling me.
You better mute out and take that one there.
You do want to talk for a second, Steve?
Sure, I'll talk about it. Recently, Chris and I have been looking in, and we're discussing some cases that as we go into Texas and next week to look at the Amber Crum case. Last week, Mrs. Steve, who is my wife and co-host on my show, that she brought up the point of that she was notified and reading some articles about a number of victims being found in Austin, Texas. And so that's what brought my attention to it then. And of course, I've done a couple of shows on it. And it is extremely suspicious because for the fact that um, there's the debate that, well, it could be just people that's intoxicated and going near water and falling in, getting away from the trails, going near places they can't swim, and therefore it's easy for them to drown. But there's certain survival instincts that we have that tells us to stay away from water. If you can't swim, you don't take those risks as much. Even if you're intoxicated, you really don't take a lot of those risks. And it is extremely strange that we have these in the middle of winter. Um, I had a lifeguard, I think from Australia, sent me some information that they have a large population, or the numbers in the wintertime for them as far as death by drowning is high, but it's the winter. Our winter is their summer. So in December, they do have a high number of drownings there. But he says when it's winter there, that of course those numbers flip and you don't have where people are approaching, getting near the water and placing themselves in harm's way. And it's stats like that and looking at that. And of course, law enforcement will say that 2% of all self-harm deaths are due to um, drowning. Well, if we look at 2%, we have 8 people in, just a few months. And so we would have to have, in this year, you would have to have several hundred, or you'd have to have, several hundred to make that during this winter time, that you would have 2% of these deaths that would be self-harm. So the odds of 1 or 2 of these could be self-harm, but the odds are so high and stacked against it because as other creators have looked at it, and there are some great creators out there that are highly trained in understanding emotions and therapy, and they've been involved in analysis of this type and profiling. And they've looked at the numbers, and they are also going with that there is some type of offender, serial offender located in Austin. And so when I brought it up to Chris, and he was talking about had I seen the smiley face offender, and I said I have heard of him, I didn't know a lot about him, and so he brought up, and that's what he's doing now. He's comparing some of the similarities of how these people mysteriously meet their demise within a certain age group during a certain time of period near locations of water. And it is odd. And especially when some of the individuals he's going to be talking about tonight have drugs in their system, and they're not on any type of medication. And there's no reason for them to have certain medications in their system unless they were unknowingly provided those. But and we're doing this type of awareness for the fact that it's prudent to do so. That if word can get out there and make people aware, and the pressures can be brought to law enforcement so that they can go out and pay more detail and attention to detail about each individual. Because at the end of the day, we can speculate all we want, but law enforcement is going to have to do a victimology and see where these individuals were and what their normal activities were, and what has brought them to this demise. All right, Chris is back now.
I'm back.
Rambling.
Sorry, and I left you on this odd screenshot here. Okay. Sorry, I missed what you were talking about.
I was talking about some of the things that, people say, well, they drown because they can't swim. They go to the water's edge. Well, you have survival instincts. You don't put yourself in danger of things that you normally can't do. And if you can't swim, you don't really go into those areas, situations where you would place yourself in harm's way of possibly doing that by yourself, because you're looking at these people that have been partying with other people all night, And now all of a sudden we have where they're off by themselves, and people saying, well, they're going to urinate and they possibly have fallen in the water. Well, if so, it's simple to see that. If you fall in the water while you're urinating, you're not going to put your clothes, you're not going to zip up your pants, you're not going to put your belt back on, and then you simply show that, you know, that yes, he was there. He had all the indications that he was went to the river to urinate in the river, and he fell in. Well, there would be some signs of that, and it'd be simple to be in the report, and it may be in the reports. We just don't know it.
Yeah. So Dakota James, the next person on our list. Okay, so when searchers found him, he looked. Oh wait, did I skip one? Oh yeah, so we're still on him. Yeah. So when they found his body, as a matter of fact, when the search party found his body, he looked just like the missing poster. And then we talked about the multiple cameras. But the biggest red flags is upon research in his laptop, they found a PayPal transaction that was supposedly, now this hasn't been 100% confirmed. This was in their investigation. But they said that there was a PayPal transaction that was 2 days after he disappeared. So a little interesting. They don't really show the receipt, but and the only thing I could think of is counter that is maybe the PayPal transaction didn't go through, because I know sometimes transactions don't go through. I'd have to look to see what date he, like if it was a Sunday or something. So that would be one of the interesting things if that was somebody else used his PayPal. But the biggest one in Dakota is he had ligature marks. I can't even pronounce it.
Ligature.
Yes. Around his neck. Literally major bruising around his neck. Like he was tied up and had like a rope around his neck. And so they actually had hemorrhaging found in his fingers, mainly in like the middle fingers here, which is conclusive with somebody trying to pull the rope, to loosen the rope. So that was something that they found on him. And I think they had to fight to get those, in his particular case, they actually had to fight to get his autopsy photos, which showed those. And that was ruled an accidental drowning. And you can clearly see, because they showed it was on oxygen or something like that. You could clearly see they are, I'm sure if you've seen any strangulation or hanging victims, they're very, very prominent in the neck. So
yeah, you even have claw marks where you'll claw your own neck. Yes, I've seen it.
So, and then the other one is his body was found face up, which we were talking before this. And with the body floating face up, I guess that's not normal because, and maybe you can explain this, but I guess when the body has been dead for a while and it starts to bloat up and everything, even if it was placed face up, it will eventually flip over.
I would think so. Normally, just due to that, the arms would fall. They would gravitate towards the bottom, and your arms naturally fall forward versus backwards. See what I'm saying? That if you go absolutely limp, face down, your arms can only go backwards so far, but coming forward, they can go. And I always thought that was the reason of why most people, now, of course, you can force yourself to float on your back with your arms out. But I always thought that as far as face down, that you would have some, I guess it's not buoyancy, it's the opposite. It's sort of like a keel of a boat. You have some density that's below the line that would pull you in that direction where you would be face down.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just texting. Thank you, Lilac Peach, for becoming a member, and then Joanne Jackson for the super chat. Okay, and I'm sorry if I missed any while I was away. All right, so that's Dakota James. Then we got two more. So William Hurley, 24 years old, Boston, Massachusetts. Navy veteran, so another guy that's familiar with water. This is on October 8, 2009. He was at a Bruins game with some friends. Now, I don't think he was like, it seems like it was like he had like a friend he knew, and then there was some acquaintances, if that makes sense. They brought their friends. And so apparently he wasn't having a lot of fun. And during the second quarter of the game, he was texting his girlfriend saying, I'm not having a good time. And there's some kid here who's acting like a fool. And so he said, I'm not feeling good. So I just want to leave. She was in class, but luckily she got out shortly after. And so he texted her, and then he said, hey, can you come pick me up? And she said, sure. And so he told her he was going to be at the front of the entrance. And so as she arrived there, she started calling him. And when they were talking on the phone, he noticed that his speech was, impaired. And she knew something was wrong. And then he also said that his phone was about to die. So he told her the last thing that he was able to say, because he couldn't really figure out where he was at, I guess, because he was actually getting so messed up. He had actually asked a pedestrian, where am I? And they said, yeah, you're on 99 Nashua Street, which is like around the corner of the TD Garden. And so when he told her that, she's like, oh, great, I'm just literally around the corner. And so minutes later, she turns down Nashua Street expecting to see him. But when she parks, she gets out and he's nowhere to be seen. He would go missing for 6 days. Now, the crazy part of it is they'd find his body 6 days later. Now, the point of entry is somewhere either here or here. Sorry, with all the mouse. But his body would be found here, but yet he was last seen on Nashua Street where it says phone. But yet the stream flows, to the right. His body was found upstream. So that's clearly his body would have been taken much further up, and to be missing 6 days, doesn't make sense for him to walk miles and then fall in. So that one was a little odd. So let's see, and then what else do I got my notes here? There's one more thing. With the phone. So when they found his body, what's interesting about this case is they actually immediately started searching the body of water when he went missing. And of course, they didn't find him the first 5 days. And when they found him on the 6th day, they literally found him right where they were searching for his body. It's kind of like the missing 411, where you got a bunch of searching going on, but they don't find his body. And then somebody comes along and sees a body floating. Then his phone, when they recovered it, it looked like it had been ran over. But when they investigated it more and took it to, some tech guys, they noticed that the phone was missing the battery. So the battery was deliberately taken out and gone. And further inspection, the phone was actually twisted, because they've experienced broken phones all the time. And they said it looked like someone clearly twisted it to break it and then tossed it in the road, and it probably got hit. And then he also had his right eye orbital socket broken. Now, the doctor says, yes, some people can fall in, hit their heads on rocks, but you would expect damage on your exterior extremities. So like your nose, your cheekbones, not your orbital socket, which is protected by everything outside of it. So they thought that was interesting. And yeah, and then the GHB in the system. So that's the date rape. So they found 18 mgs of GHB, and your body does naturally produce 10, but he was well over the limit on that. So, what do you think on that?
Well, I mean, absolutely. You can't, just the mere presence of that, just as soon as you find a phone that's been disabled and the battery taken out of, that is something that is above and beyond. And why would you do that? There's, of course, only one answer, that the phone is there with you and you have to disable it quickly. And so you break it and take the battery out somewhere along the route to whatever location you are taking him, because you don't want to be tracked.
Right. Okay, so moving on to Brian. So he's 21 years old. This will be our last one. So was out of the town celebrating the New Year 2000 millennium. And this is in Chicago, Illinois. And he's not, I forget, I didn't get a chance, but he's not from Chicago. So this one's kind of sad because they were at the bar with friends drinking. Apparently he got violently ill, thrown up. And I think he was thrown up in the cab, and the group ended up back at the Ambassador Hotel where they were all going to meet up. Most of the friends had already been inside the hotel. One of his closer friends said, hey, where's Brian? And one of the other friends said, well, he's at the front door. They're not letting him in because he's violently ill, puking. And so they got settled in, and they went to go look for him, and he was nowhere to be found. So Brian was last seen in front of the Ambassador Hotel walking towards the Lakeshore Drive. And so we can see here the area that he went towards. Now, what's crazy is this Lakeshore Drive, there's no direct entrance to the, I forget which lake this is. This is one of the 5 lakes. Let me show you a picture here. So this is not the best picture, but there's no way. There's a bunch of fences and stuff. Especially at night on New Year's, it's really busy. And they don't believe, if he was violently ill, to cross 2 different intersections, because there's no cross, there's no way to walk, all the way across to the body of water. So for someone that's never been there, doesn't know this area, and he goes missing for 77 days, somehow makes it way to a pedestrian tunnel. If he just made it to the water by himself, there wasn't, a third party involved. And so there is a tunnel that will take you under and then spit you out at the bottom, under one of these streets, and then you could get to the body of water. But for him to do that, he would have to navigate up the street. And they thought, for him to not know that area and then to, navigate and then fall in the water. So let me look at my notes here. They did a test to see if the body flow. Oh, yeah. So they did some tests on this. So his body would be found 77 days later. So it would travel from Chicago, Illinois, and be recovered in Gary, Indiana. Now, it is possible for a body to float. They did some tests. Now, typically when the bodies would, they did have multiple drownings, but usually they would be found close to where they had been entered in. But they said they did find beacons that would float out and actually curve over down into Gary, Indiana. So it's not impossible. But the biggest thing for 77 days is that the body was found once again in moderate decomposition. And not only that, but his internal organs were well preserved. Now, some would say, okay, the water was, it's wintertime, the water's, really cold. So it'll preserve the body. But they said it's 36 degrees. And speaking with the doctor, he says, yes, that will help kind of preserve it, but it shouldn't, his decomposition levels should have been way further along.
Well, they know. I'll have to take their word for it.
And then the other thing is there was no fluid in his lungs. And once again, body was found floating up. Like I said, not all these cases, but these ones that I'm talking about, once again, the body is floating up.
I'm going to have to do some research on that, and I may have to do some water testing.
Yeah. Okay, let me get caught up on stuff here real quick. Actually, I do got one more case. And this one's another one that's interesting. Thank you so much, Mike D Experience. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm sorry. I am way behind on chat. Okay. All right, so we covered that. All right, one last one. We got Todd Geib, 22 years old, Casanova, Michigan. Went missing on July 2nd, 2005. He was at an orchard party. So he was at an orchard party. They were drinking. And then he went missing for 21 days. And let me hide this. Once again, they would find his body. Moderate decomp, but this one's very interesting because this lake has a lot of insects. When they found his body, there was no insects. Now, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Maybe some may not, but when the body starts to decomp, flies get in, maggots, and they start.
Mother Nature takes its course regardless, and Mother Nature is not very friendly when you start decomposition.
So, and then they found 2 depression type drugs in his system. So that he wasn't prescribed any medication. And these 2 depression medications kind of did the same thing. So it wouldn't make sense to take both of them. And both of them were not lethal doses, but in high concentration. When they found his body, they actually found his body vertical, like standing up, even though the water is deep enough, deeper than his stance. So he was floating literally like this. This is a reenactment. So very interesting. They've never seen a body float like that.
I haven't either. Not unless it had something holding it.
Which there wasn't. Yeah. The other thing is they actually tested this lake and did it with some pigs, and they even wrapped them up in in clothing and stuff, because they noticed when they pulled them out of the water, because this has got a lot of algae in this lake, there wasn't a lot of film on his clothing. So when they tested these pigs, they noticed right away within 24 hours, the pigs had insects, and they were already starting to do their nature, you know. And so for him to be, missing for 21 days, supposedly in that water, he shouldn't be much left of him. And the one last thing is dogs. They had dog trackers out. So they picked up his scent. So if I go back here. So here we got dirt road. Here's the orchard party. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a bigger part of the map. But if we go right and just to the bottom, there would be his house. It's not far away. It's a 5-minute walk. They picked up his scent heading towards his house. But as it got close to his house, his scent disappeared, as if somebody had picked him up. So have you ever experienced with scent dogs tracking somebody and then?
Well, I mean, yeah, we've used, normally in my career when we was using tracking dogs, it was for an individual that was taking flight and things. And so, yes, we've lost, I've lost a lot of individuals due to a dog handler not being able to fully track them. But then sometimes we do have success.
Yeah. So that is, and then so most of these cases, especially these ones here, would be reopened due to the fact that all these new findings, especially like Todd Geib and stuff, that just a lot of these bodies, moderate decomp when should expect much more decomposition, and so it's kind of interesting. Now, the one thing that I will mention, because like I said, the smiley face thing itself would probably be the most weak point of their case, because just smiley faces are everywhere. But on this particular case, they actually found a smiley face on his gravestone, which is actually pretty disgusting. And they actually found one on a tree nearby. So that's kind of wild. And this is kind of one of the earlier cases. So very strange. So let's see, where do we leave off on Todd Geib? Okay. So now moving on to what's been going on in Texas. So we kind of talked about in the beginning. So 4 bodies found in the last 2 months in this Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. All 4 men are around the same age, prompting many to wonder whether they were targeted victims or were they just unlucky and had been drinking too much and stumbled into the water, which I know you were kind of talking about. So we have Jason John. So remember the John thing. He was one of the more recent ones, recovered on February 13th, last seen on Rainy Street, which a lot of them, similar circumstances, was out with friends, last seen on surveillance. They would find his body a few days later. Then we have Cliff Axtell, 40 years old, married, father of 2, went missing on February 25th near a Stubbs in downtown, which is kind of close to that same area. And he would be found on March 5th. And
that's a lot. I think that's quite a few blocks away from the waterfront, isn't it?
It is, yes. I've got a picture. So this is, yes. So here's a look if you want to see here. So here's the Rainy Street. And then you can see where the bodies are. A lot of them are recovered. So I'm assuming maybe the current goes towards, if this is north, be heading towards the east.
Yeah, I some of those I did a thing, and they're scattered along. I think 2 of them were near the dam, and several of the others were up along the where it necks down the backwaters up through there. There's a couple of bridges where they were found, but it's all considered Lady Bird Lake, even the backwater of the Colorado River.
Yeah. So let me go back here real quick here. So yeah, we left off with Cliff. Then we have another Jonathan, another John, 33 years old. And let's see, let me move this here. So he was last seen on March 31st. And I think he's found a day later on April 1st. Same thing, Rainy Street at a taco stand. He was last seen. And same thing. Yep, body would be found over here. And then another John Christopher Hayes Clark, 30 years old, body found on April 15th. Now, according to this, on this one, at least on a couple of reports that I'd seen, apparently, because I don't know, maybe if it's just more, I think one of the latest cases, they say the death is still unknown, hasn't been labeled accidental drowning or whatever, according to the report. Prior to that, we had multiple guys, but we have 3 guys here. Julio Santos, Martin, and then Christian. Now, the 2 guys on the left, same thing. They were, 2018, 2019, found dead in the same body of water. Now, Julio, his case is different because he was actually found alive. So his case is interesting. Apparently, after nearly 60 hours, a 20-year-old man missing over the weekend on Rainy Street has been found alive. Christian was found on the other side of Lady Bird Lake near the Congress Avenue Bridge in very rough condition. He was found deep in the brush along the hike and bike trail, an area not easy for those on the trail to spot just passing by. He was conscious and taken to the hospital.
And I've never heard any more about his story. I would really find it interesting to figure out exactly from his family what he reported went on during that time.
Right. So let me pull up Google Maps here. Rainy Street. Okay, sorry you guys can't see it. I'm going to pull it up here in just a minute. Okay, so there is that. So here is Rainy Street. So this is Rainy Street. Let me move this over, and then clearly a lot of construction. Well, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, let me get. Am I going the wrong way? Okay, yeah, I'm going the right way. Yep, just went a little too far. So this is Rainy Street here. Looks like there's bars and grills all up and down here. Another bar on the left side here. And as we get a little bit closer, here is the lake. And we can actually take the path as well. So here is the path. Now, we were talking before the show, like if some of these guys were just going to take a pee or something, why not just go behind a tree?
Yeah.
So what? Now apparently they're going to be putting up some fences. If they've already, I think they've already started. Apparently to that report that we were just listening to. But gosh, it looks like a pretty calm body of water. Makes me wonder which way it goes.
It's going in the direction you go because the dam's down below this impoundment.
Oh, okay, so we would be heading towards the direction that the bodies, yeah. But interesting that they'd be stumbling. They all be stumbling this direction. And if you had 10 bodies, well, at least 8 found in here, you would think they'd been doing something sooner. So what do you think? We talked about John Kelly, the profiler. He mentioned that he believes it's a possibility that there is a serial killer out there. What's your take on it?
Like I said, he's a professional. He knows about this, and he came up with some interesting information about the 2% stuff that I hadn't thought of at that point. And now that he mentions it, absolutely, because I looked at my career of all the people that did self-harm, and drowning was nowhere in the on the spectrum. I worked some cases, of course, where people would go to near waterways and commit that act, but they didn't use the water itself. And I think only on one occasion did I see an individual that did self-harm that used another manner of death and then fell into the water intentionally. And that's, that stands out in my career because I'd never seen anyone ever do that before.
Right. Sorry,
But he was already deceased prior to getting into the water.
Yeah. So do you think it'll take some time before some of these medical records will get out? Because, it kind of seems, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to go back. And now some of them, they may have done thorough, the pathologist may have covered all the bases. We don't know yet. And they may have to go back and ask or even see if some of these victims may need to be exhumed to verify. We just don't know how thorough each of them were looked at by the coroner and the pathologist working and doing the autopsies. And, or was it simply just ruled a drowning and then papers filed and families took over? I don't know.
Right. Sorry. I just want to email that. So let's see if you guys have any questions. Let's knock some out. And then there's even some more bodies that are being found, not in this body of water, but in Chicago as well.
And even as John Kelly said, that if you want, if you're out doing certain acts and committing certain homicides and things, water is their friend as far as a criminal, because it does wash away a lot of different types of evidence, including DNA. And the longer you can separate and the quicker you can separate yourself from a victim and put them in an environment that will assist you in cleaning or wiping away your any evidence linking you to the crime. And if you can get them into a waterway with no type of trauma, even more so, and that is what leads people to think that and having to evaluate that these are homicides for the fact just due to the sheer number of victims found in the water, and that is an outlier of what is normal.
Right.
What are the historical past of, sure, even the other numbers, when you look through the years, you had 1 or 2 drownings in these areas. You don't have 4 in 2 months or 8 or 10 in just 5 or 6 months. So the number is something that is key to look at.
Right. So I'm just looking at some questions here. Yes. So with Smiley Face, it was more, they almost were mostly in their 20s. Now with the Austin, Texas, it's a little more, 30s to 40s. Yeah, a little older, but a little wiser. But I guess not that wise because but I could see some of them being accidental, but when you start getting this cluster, I mean, that's what sparked these guys to look at these other cases, and I'm sure not every case is all, foul play, but it just seems so odd that so many bodies in that short of time, 4 bodies, 2 months.
And we have to figure out what would be the motive for him to do this. I mean, if there's certain acts committed to the individual, you would think they would, and they may be able to discover that through a closer analysis of the victims and possibilities of looking at it, that what is the motive for this? Is it some type of fantasy or otherwise? And I'm sure they're going to start looking very close at all the victims from this point forward and seeing if they might possibly missed something on those earlier cases where it was just a easy or are not so much easy, but it was just the first instinct. Oh, it was a drowning.
Right. Yeah. Outfit killer that draws smiley faces on the body. No, that's a different guy, Melissa. I know there's a couple of smiley, but yeah, that's a different one. And mainly that with the smiley faces, they just believe, well, it's rogue cell or something. Oh, I know what I wanted to share is, so in regards to the smiley face, it makes me wonder if there is, because they thought, because for it to be one person to be able to travel all around through the Northeastern, sometimes I think a few of these cases happen maybe not on the same day, but the next day, very close, hundreds of miles apart. So it's like, how could this person be, being able to do this? So there's mentions of possible killers or a cell. What do you think about, it could be any kind of gang, biker gang, whatever gang, but is this kind of like an initiation?
Well, like I said, that's determining of what the motive is so important in all these cases and in these victims. I mean, they're saying that we're recovering. I think in some of the gang related stuff, I think some of those may be motivated by robbery. But in these 8 victims right now, we don't know what was found on the victims. We don't know if there's missing jewelry. We don't, you don't have to have signs of trauma, but you may have other signs of some type of criminal activity, like missing jewelry, necklaces, their billfolds, watches, what was part of their normal day carry, and if the victims all have their billfolds and they're missing all cash or something, that might be a indicator of what it might be. Especially if there's not any type of assaults on the person, and have they checked for that? And it will be interesting. Like I said, it may be something that the coroners and the pathologists will be taking a closer look at from this point on.
Yeah. Chris and Mr. Steve, will you visit that lake at nighttime?
I'm on if I have time, I'm gonna go down there, pass through. I'm trying to get Chris to go with me. Whenever we leave on the Crumb case, I know there's another. We're going to be getting into that shortly about what our plans are.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to see if we can get a couple questions, and then we'll talk about, because we are literally a week from today. We are going to be gone.
Hopefully, I mean, everything says. I sent the message about 8 or 9 hours ago, and I hadn't heard anything back yet. But sometimes it does take them a day or two to get back with me.
Yeah.
And, hopefully, I'll have everything. I may already have it upstairs. I just hadn't looked at it.
Camilla says the smiley face is the most common graffiti out there. Yeah. So let me finish her comment. I hope y'all make it to Austin just to get the layout, like when Mr. Steve went to South Carolina. Yes, I agree. Be happy to be with him. But yes, that was one of the biggest arguments. They have even put out when these guys, like I said, it's Detective Gannon, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Forgive me. But these 2 retired detectives started looking into those cases in the Northeastern part. And after they started kind of making some noise and stuff, and I don't know what police department put it out, but they put out a statement. I don't know. It might have been the FBI or something, but they put out a statement saying that, there are some flaws to this theory, this smiley face theory. And I would say most of them really just break down the whole smiley face itself, which I would agree with, because, these smiley faces, most people graffiti bridges and stuff like that. So you're going to most likely going to find, you got something that's most commonly graffitied, bridges and certain, objects. And then you've got one of the most common symbols, the smiley face. And one of the biggest things is the smiley faces. None of them are ever the same. So that don't really make sense either. There's no, specific smiley face that's, all stands out. Yeah, that's what I want to know about these recent cases. There's not a lot, and I still need to do some more research on these current cases. But the older cases, a lot of them that did have cell phones, they're gone. They'd find the wallet and keys, except for the one case that I mentioned where they did actually find a cell phone, but the battery was purposely taken out. Seems very strange. Who would take out the battery? But yeah, that's a great question. Oh, Tony says, I live near Cincinnati, but I have family in Austin. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so let me see if we can get any more questions. So did you want to talk about the other one, Missy Beavers? Because you actually featured that on your show as well.
Yes, and that's not too far from where we'll be up in Dallas, Fort Worth and area. And I know you have interest in it, and we most certainly will travel down there. But I think I've already made a little bit of changing in my scheduling to spend an extra day or two in Texas to go both through were Missy Beavers and then down to Austin, and just try to see, get a better understanding and lay of the land and boots on the ground and see what the areas look at under the similar conditions or times. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. No cell phone is really disturbing. Yeah, I'm not sure about these recent cases. There's, like I said, there's not too much out there. It's just like, hey, we've got all these names of bodies. Just very basic details. I'm sure if I need to go check out that Facebook page. I tried to join it, but then I just haven't had time to look into it. I'm sure there's probably some more detailed information, maybe, shared with close friends and stuff. But, that one survivor, Christian, who went missing for, what was it? How many days did he go
About
missing?
6 days.
60 hours. So it was 2 days.
60 hours. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he was supposedly kind of beat up. And there's not a lot to it, but, was that an attempt abduction that was failed? And, he's lucky to have his life. But I'm glad that they're going to put up cameras and fence it off. That's great. But I think they should, if that thing happens anywhere else, especially after just two bodies within a couple of weeks of each other, I think they should do the same thing wherever that happens next and get to the bottom of it and figure out, is it people, just falling in or?
Well, like I said, when you go from having one or two drownings a year to one or two a month, that is a change.
Yeah. Missy Beavers. So Missy Beavers is another case. What year did that happen? I know it was like 2015.
I can't remember.
Yeah, 15, 16. Yeah, just a lady that was doing workout exercises. She had a program, and she, I think because it was going to be raining, she had reserved the church. And this is in what part of Texas was this?
I'm gonna be butchering it, but it's Mid-Athonian or something like that.
Oh yeah, so it's just south of Austin, right, or north of Austin?
It's south east of Dallas Fort Worth, I believe.
Okay, so Missy Beavers, yeah, she was a trainer.
Yeah, it was on April 18th of 2016.
Yeah, I'm sure people, when they see this, I'll just play the footage. But someone broke in I'm just going to play. I'm just going to play it. Oh, you guys can't hear this. That's right. I'm just going to play just part of the footage of him walking around, or he. It could be a she. But if you guys do remember this, there's somebody that came in with SWAT gear, or what looked like SWAT gear, was wandering around the place. Now, Missy Beavers would show up, I think, around 5 a.m., 6 a.m., something like that. This person showed up about 30 minutes prior, and they just kind of walked around, tried to break a couple doors open. Very odd. And unfortunately, Missy Beavers would show up early before all of her people that were going to train with her. And she was, sadly, her life was taken. And they still have not caught that person, even though they have footage of this person. Interesting case.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So let me see if there's any more questions. And thank you to all for the donations. Like I said, it's all going to go towards Aiden Clune and all of our cases coming up. And we're going to try to multitask when we go out to Texas. So we're going to try to do that and then maybe head down to Austin for a few days to see what's going on. And then Missy Beavers is on the way. Anything else you want to share, Steve?
No, I appreciate you having me. And I look forward to, hopefully I'll have some good news for you in the next hour or two, or next day or so at the latest. And so that I can get all the everything lined up, and so our travels, and that will hopefully have some good information and good news by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, hopefully.
Yeah. So on my wish list, so I don't know if I'm going to be doing one or not, because the problem with that is I'm going to be gone in 1 week. So I'm afraid if I did something like that, then if stuff comes in, I'm not going to be here so I might put that on hold, but I really appreciate you guys. It's very kind of you guys to think about that. And I'll do kind of a community post on that, maybe when I get back, and see what we can do. But like I said, most of the stuff that comes in, is going to be we've ordered most of our equipment, and we want to do more than just like what AWP did, but we want to be more versatile and do more than just water. I want to do cold and missing person cases. So, but yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on this. And then what's your schedule coming up? Are you going to keep a regular schedule until?
Well, this week I'm just packing and everything. I'll have a couple shows this week, but trying to get everything and make arrangements so that we'll have housing, food, and everything for everybody when they show up in Texas, because we've got people coming from 4 different states. And so I'll get everything in order so that, like I say, we can be productive when we are boots on the ground. And so then after that, of course, following back through Texas, and then I know you're going to Nevada for your search.
Yeah.
And then I've got to go up, and hopefully you can meet me up in Iowa for doing a cold case up there on the Evansdale.
Yep. No, it's an honor. And like I said, hopefully we get that email back, and we are literally a week from today in Texas. So it's so crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So great time to become a member of Patreon, because I'm going to have a lot of extra stuff, tons of extra stuff, because I'll be kind of filming. I am driving there, so there'll be a lot of sightseeing on the way there. So I'm kind of excited for that.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and everybody stay safe out there. And if you know anyone in that area, absolutely make sure they're aware of any possibility of what's going on, although I'm sure that they are pretty well aware of it from having 71,000 people on Facebook discussing it in the community.
Yeah.
And I'm sure law enforcement may or may not be bringing full awareness by just you know, I hate that sometimes they tell you that don't worry, we have everything under control, and sometimes that can mislead the public, and hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I appreciate you having me, and I'll go backstage.
Yeah, and please, if you're new to this channel, please go and subscribe to Steve's channel because we are connected. We are going to be attached at the hip from now on because we're going to be doing those cases. I always have his link in the description of these channels when I do the live, and my mods have been posting his link to his channel, but I will post it at the very end of the show and put it in the description, or make sure it should be there. I always do. So thank you guys. You guys have a wonderful night. I'll be back on tomorrow to do the Lori Vallow update and a couple more lives. And then, yeah, I'll be leaving Friday. So a couple more lives and then we're out there. So, all right, guys, I'm going to play the new pet outro, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Let me get that going. If I can find it. There it is. Okay. All right. Love you guys.
you.